Welcome to your Raise the Bar Pro Tip of the Week. Exciting day today as we have Travis Tucker, Regional Manager for Ketel One, here in the studio with us. And we're talking all things Ketel. We're talking about the history of Ketel, which I think is extremely important as we're seeing vodka really start to push its way back into the front and center for our consumers. I think the story, the history of what Ketel One is important. When we think about craft brands that have had such a huge push, right, over the past few years, and the consumer just going nuts over these boutique brands, I think they've really fallen in love with the story, right? They've really fallen in love with what is that unique, interesting story that these brands have. But the reality is Ketel One has one of the most amazing stories of any brand that's out there. And I think that's something that we want to make sure that our teams here at Raise the Bar really know the history behind. So give us a little bit of that. How did it begin? The Nolet family, how did it get its name? Really, what is the foundation that has created this iconic brand that we all love?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's an absolutely beautiful bar. Happy to be here to talk about Ketel One Vodka and the Nolet family distillery. You're 100% correct, Chris. Consumers want authenticity these days. Luckily, we have some of the most authentic brands, story, heritage, provenance in the distilling industry that dates back to 1691 in Schiedam, Holland. If you're doing the math, that's 327 years old, older than America, even. Nolet family distillery was founded in Schiedam. It was a port city, which is very important during the day. It had cargo, it had grain mills, it had all the things you would need to build a successful distilling business. However, Johann Nolet, the founder, did not know such things, and he did not know, I think, how successful a distillery would become.
Wow. I mean, when you talk about a brand that's 300 plus years of success, right? It's not 300 plus years of just being around. I mean, we talk about Geneva and the origins of what the distillery was and how successful it's #1 selling Geneva in Holland to this day, right?
Yes, sir, Ketel One.
Which is, I mean, you look at that and then transitioning to vodka, which is, most people think gin and vodka drastically different, which they're really not. And we're going to dive into that later. But that transition of going from Geneva to then vodka, what was that transition like? How did that happen?
It's a great question as well. So 327 years, it's a long legacy. I work for the 11th generation owner of the Nolet distillery, Carl Nolet Jr. His father, Carl Nolet Sr., back in 1979 was handed the keys to the distillery after his father had passed it down. He came to the US and he was deciding where to take the distillery next. The Nolets.
But gin, right? When he came, he was really thinking that he wanted to bring this gin over to the US, right?
100%.
Okay.
He came here to produce a gin, but what he found was the US market was gravitating towards another spirit at the time, vodka. And so he tasted a variety of vodkas that were available in the US, and you noticed they all had kind of a sharp characteristic to them. So calling upon all of that legacy, all of that distilling know-how, he went back to Schiedam and decided to create something better, Ketel One Vodka.
So you jumped right into the distillation process. What makes the distillation process for Ketel different from some of the other vodkas that we're seeing in the market?
That's a great question as well. In fact, Ketel One's name comes from the original copper pot still used to craft Ketel One Vodka, Distiller Ketel #1, which is copper pot still in Dutch. I believe we're one of the only brands to actually name our vodka after a part of the distilling process.
Wow.
And that really brings to life, how is vodka produced? Well, most vodka, 99% of it, I would have to imagine behind your shelf, is column distilled, creating a very neutral, clean spirit. We impart that because we like the crisp, clean pureness that comes from column distillation, but we also use copper pot distillation as well, which has been used for centuries and perhaps is one of the oldest forms of distillation. It gives the spirit a sophistication, a body, a viscosity, if you will, which we really liked as well. But Carl Nolet Sr. wanted to create something that combined both of those aspects, which is one of the only vodkas, I think, to do so. You have column distilled spirits, you have pot still distilled spirits. We are a combination of both.
This is such great information when we're going back to our bars and we're thinking about how are we creating that experience? How are we creating, I love the word used, the authenticity for our guests. Ketel One is not just an iconic brand that is, one of the big brands in the market. It's a brand that has a lot of details. It's a brand that has been around for a long time and they know how to do it right. We have segments coming up with Travis talking about Ketel, talking about the botanicals, a lot of great things that we need to cover. Those will be coming to you over the next few weeks, so stay tuned. This has been your Raise the Bar Pro Tip of the Week.